Well, the old Christmas sign has kind of lost its Christmas cheer. I'm going to be putting a new string of lights in this. I'm going to make some adapters to adapt the lights into the sign. They'll be 3D printed. I'm going to put them up on Thingiverse if anybody is interested in them. I will post a link in the description below to the adapters. And now we can open it up and see what's inside of it, which is just a normal set of Christmas lights. But the problem is none of it works. So I don't know when these were made, probably in the 70s maybe or something, but you can't just go down and buy a replacement set of lights for it. So I'm going to use a regular 150 light multi-function set to replace them with. But what I have to do is, let's see if we can get one of these out of here without tearing it up too bad. Let's figure out how I'm going to get these to lock into these holes. So I've got a couple of ideas how to do this. I'm going to make the ear on the plate just like it is, but I'm going to put this tab that's on the back side on the same side as that. I think that'll be easier to print and easier to lock in. Now the two different ways of doing it, one is going to be to make a piece like this that locks into the hole and put the hole for this part directly in the center of it and set the bulb just a little lower. I don't know how well the light will come out on that, how well it will shine. The other idea is when I make this piece, make this hole offset so that it's thicker on this side so that it doesn't break too easily. So first of all, I'm going to have to start by taking some measurements and go from there. It doesn't leave me much for wall thickness. Alright, now that I've got some dimensions, I'm going to go fire up 123D and see if I can design a part to do this job with. This is not going to be a tutorial on 123D design. There's plenty of those out there on the internet, and you do not want to watch me try to teach you how to use this, because I just barely make it through it most of the time. But I do get it done, and well, it's not too difficult. Pretty much anybody can do it after watching a few tutorials. What we have here is version 2, because I found out that you can't have this tab and this on the same side. It runs into a lot of things on the sign. So let's see if this will print. After test printing a couple of them one at a time, I decided to go ahead and do batches of 20. This is my slightly modified Geeetech printer. It's still hanging out in its temporary heated box that I made for it. Oh, probably been 3 years ago now. You know, temporary. Sometimes it takes a little while to get around to making things permanent. So all the old ones are out. Now it's time to put the new ones in. The only thing I'm going to have to watch for is to make sure I kind of line these up with the top edge where the bulb splits. So hopefully if a bulb ever needs to be changed, I'll be able to change it without taking the whole thing apart and getting into the back of it to get the bulb out of it. They go in fairly easily. Takes just a little wiggle to get them to go in, and then a little bit of a twist, and I have just a few of them to put in. I printed like 160 of them or something like that, just in case I break some or whatever. Printed them in batches of 20. So now it's just a matter of taking them out, sticking them in. The wire slides fairly easily through this little gap. Well, yeah, I said it slides fairly easily, and this one's going to be a pain. Anyway, there's enough room to get it through that little gap. Slide it down till it's about even with the top edge of the bulb holder. I printed these out of PLA. I attempted to print them out of ABS, but the ABS seemed to crack along the layer lines every time I tried to install them. The PLA ones rarely cracked, so these are all PLA and they seem to work just fine. Well, after putting a few of these in here, I found out that they are rather tight. But they do go in, and it is going to work, I believe. Works just like it did when it was new. Alright, so this is going to take me a while. I'm sure of it. These things are a little bit snug, and because they're very small, they're not very easy on the fingers. But this is going to work. I'm happy to report. Right here, you can see that tab is past that one. I ended up going down around putting them in, and I had to take these two back out to get this one in. So there's going to be places as you're putting them in that the tabs will run into each other. So now that I know that, I'm going to kind of watch out for them as I go. Another thing I'm trying to be really careful with is pulling on the wires too much, and I check the lights every now and then, make sure they're still working, because the wires are rather small and probably fairly easy to break. And by luck of design, not because I designed it to be that way, the wires will go into that little slot, and the flat will go through the gap, so you don't have to pull the wire all the way up. Flat sides go right through the gap. And don't do what I've done 3 times already. You know, have this light hanging up here and put this one in, and then have to take, I had 3 of them in one time, had one of these hanging out already. So I'm trying to be more careful that I put every light in on the string in order. They are harder to take out than they are to put in. Yeah, just do them in the right order the first time. That would just be crazy. Oh, I broke the tab off that one. Wow, very tight. Some of them are tighter than others, but they all do go in. And I don't know if that's variation in the casting of the sign, or if that's variation in my prints, or if I'm just not holding my mouth right when I try to put them in. But a little wiggle and they usually go in pretty good. And I'm coming down to the bottom of one right here, so I'm probably going to skip this bulb, put this one in first, and then put this one in, because this tab may run into this bulb as I try to lock it in. I just think it'll be easier. I think it's variation in their castings, because there's 2 or 3 of them right here that are very hard to get in. My biggest concern when making these little plastic adapters was that I wanted to make sure they were tight enough so they didn't fall out. I think I succeeded in that. Now I'll put the higher up one in. See where that tab went past it. It would have cleared anyway. You can rotate the tab a little bit either way to lock it anyway. Well, this sucks. That screw that holds the back cover on, the ear on this is going to hit that when I try to lock it. So I'm going to file it down a little bit for clearance and press on. I'm hoping that's the only one that does that. Filing it was going to take too long, so I just nipped away at it a little bit with some side cutters, and amazingly enough, it didn't explode. I figured it would split at the layers when I did that, but it worked. Pressing on. Well, we're about halfway there. I went down around here, and then the next red one I jumped to here and went up here because I wasn't going to be able to jump all the way across that at one time. You're going to find spots where you have to do that, but there's 144 lights in this particular one that I'm doing, and it's a 150 light set, so I'm going to have 6 left over. So I could have left a spare bulb just laying in between there. I plan on leaving all the spares down in this corner, or all the extras, let's say. Well, as you can see here, I've already pulled a few of the lights out, but I had lights in all the way over to here, and just happened to glance back and notice that I didn't check my work, so I got to take all these out, move them all over one, put them all back in. Yeehaw! And we're in the home stretch. For the most part, they're very hard to turn, but they're also very hard to install. So they really don't need to be turned because they're not going to fall out anyway. And there we have it. Now all I have to do is mount the controller, which I think I'm going to put just above this. Just drill a hole so that I can press the button, and maybe use some double sticky tape. See how that works out. A few calculations. We are good. Wipe everything off with a little bit of alcohol. Let it dry a bit. Now we'll check and see whether I can press the button through this small of a hole or not. And yes. Alright, now we just peel the plastic off, line it up with the hole, and press it in place. Put the cover back on, put in a couple of screws, and we are done. Tie a little loop in the cord to kind of relieve the strain so it doesn't yank the cord out of the power box if it ever gets tugged on. Get it to stay in place for a minute while I lay the cover back over it and run it out to the original holes, and of course get all the wires to line up as the lid goes down, which I pretty well got that set up, but there's a lot of them in there. Looks okay, but not quite there. Oh, I know what's happening. Those two screws are still in the holes and they're staying above it. All right, put some screws in and give it a final test run. I have to say, these parts are kind of small and they are rather tough to push in. So you do end up with sore fingers after pushing them all in. But I think the end result is worth it. I'd say that's a success. Alright, there's another one of my random repair videos. Every year I brought this thing out, it was a little closer and closer to no lights working at all. So it was time to replace the whole string. Well, I think the results were well worth the time and energy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking and sharing my videos. Remember to subscribe, and Merry Christmas.